Thanks, it's Owen here. Just wanted to check, can you hear me?
I can.
Right, a very good afternoon to everybody. Thank you for coming to Clacton this afternoon. You're very welcome here. Fire escape will be out through those doors to the right and back out to the front of the building. Toilets are also on that corridor out there. We will go through the agenda as published, but we will make an amendment to a couple and just swap them around to bring finance forward. Firstly, I'd like to go on to apologies and substitutions, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Sam Kane.
Thank you very much, Owen. Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say that Richard Barrett, the tendering Section 151 officer, is attending, but unfortunately we haven't got a nameplate for him. So he's incognito.
Thank you for informing us of that. And we also have, I will just make reference to Councillor Alan Goggin, who's joining us today, eager to learn more about the NEP, and he's very welcome as well. Lovely. You're welcome, sir. Nice to meet you. We move on then to item number 3, which is declarations of interest. Can I ask if there are any, please? No indications of declarations of interest. Thank you very much. We shall move on once more to have your say. Now, we do have someone, a member of the public, who'd like to speak. Mr. Ireland, I believe. However, if I could bring you in when we actually come to the TRO section, that way we will have what you said fresh in our memory, I think, when it comes to that, if that's okay with you, Mr. Ireland. Thank you. Is there anybody else to speak? No. Alan, did you want to say anything at this time?
In the years I've been in
Thank you, Alan. Doesn't sound like you're going to cause us too much trouble then. With that in mind, then I'll move on now to the item, which is number 5, minutes of the last meeting, which was held in June. You've all had a good amount of time to digest and read those. Are there any comments, queries, or alterations that anyone would like to put forward, please? Councillor Hargreaves, please.
Chair, I'm happy with the minutes, but there's been no action from some of the items on the minutes, which is the contractual stuff. Actually, further contractual matter perhaps could be raised later on. So it's action from minutes themselves. Happy with.
Thank you, Councillor Hargreaves. I think you've outlined that it will be a good time to bring that up as and when we meet those points within the agenda. We move then, sorry, I need someone to move those. Do you move the minutes, Councillor Hargreaves? Happy to move. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you very much, Councillor Goss. All those in favour, please, can I have a show of hands? Thank you very much. Welcome as well. Sorry, Councillor Butland, I do apologise you weren't here at the last meeting, were you? You're very welcome.
Right. Yes, Chairman, thank you very much. I am certainly for the rest of this year will be Braintree's representative in place of Councillor Cunningham, who is now has the highways portfolio at county, and there would be a potential conflict of interest. So I have drawn the short straw.
You're very welcome, sir. You're very welcome. We then move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is urgent items. I'm being told that we've not had any put forward, so we can then move on to the next item on the agenda, and this is going swimmingly. So we're going to swap item number 8 to item number 7, so we will bring forward the financial report. I think many of us are interested to hear an update on that matter, and I think it's the right thing to do to bring that forward. I think we'll hear the report, and then questions we will take at the end, I think, please. Yes. We have the Deputy 151 officer in attendance online, who will be able to answer any questions as and when they come up. You're very welcome, sir, in the background there somewhere. Over to you, Richard, please.
Thank you very much. I think it's fair to say it's been another challenging year for NET. We have started off slightly better than last year in terms of the income from PCNs. So you can never rely on PCN income, but we have started at least on a better footing. We're still struggling with recruitment and attrition. So those leaving for one reason or another are greater than the number of people that we had employed for a time. Recruitment's picked up again now, I'm glad to say. So I've just met in Clacton, in fact, one of my new trainees who's out today learning the beat. We put in the fees and charges changes, which is an inflationary increase back on the 21st of August. So we're just starting now to see the results of that. And also put together with my colleagues here some details which we're calling a rescue plan, because that's what it is, about how to help meet the deficit and repair the reserve fund. Reserve fund, if you remember, it should be 400,000, and we used all of that up in the at the end of the last financial year, covering the greater part of the deficit, not all of it. So, as I always say, there's still some risk in what we do, particularly around cold weather. With the worst of the weather of the year still to come, and that happens at the end of the financial year, which is the most challenging place to get back from. As part of the rescue plan, we've also a freeze on some posts where some other people have left the organisation, and we've been right through all of the details with our client officers to make sure that our forecasts are as up to date as they can possibly be, and that results in the current year. At the time of writing that, was likely to outturn around about on budget. Having said that, then we learned that the National Joint Committee for sorry. Okay. The National Joint Committee for salaries has made their award, but Colchester isn't a member of that. We're locally negotiated. So we've been looking at the possible impact of salaries increases. Now, the budget holds 4% for salaries increases. And at the time we spoke to the client officers, they said we'd like the worst possible illustration. So you want the worst case. So that's what I've done. I've illustrated, I think, 4, 7, 9, and 11%. And obviously inflation has been running up around 11% for part of the time, has also impacted our supplies and services. So I've included the illustrations in the appendices, second appendix, which shows the impact of some staff costs there. If there were an 11% increase, and I suspect it probably won't get that high, but if it were, then the outturn was likely to be 160,000 deficit again. So that clearly gives us a challenge for half of the year to get back from that point. So as part of our rescue plan, we had phase A, B and C. We're now into phase C, which puts some people at risk. And we do all we possibly can to get the whole lot back on track. There's only so many places we can look for income. Penalty charges are largest expenditure, our largest income. Fees and charges for residence permits have been increased already this year, and there's a plan to increase them in subsequent 3 years as well. And then there's only a small number of other items, such as pay and display on street, and 1 or 2 other things that we could possibly do. So that's a summary. It's not a bright and rosy picture, unfortunately, but we're doing as much as we possibly can to get things back on track. As much as everybody else want this to be working and working well. I'm confident in the forecasts that we've got, and it just doesn't read a very rosy picture. As postscript, so I'm nearly there. Postscript to this, I've looked at the appendices to the agreement in some detail. Spent a couple of hours looking through those, and I've circulated to the client officers what I feel the meaning of those truly is. Those Appendix E seems to look back at previous years, and Appendix F seems to look into budget planning for future years. Appendix F has the part in there about stopping to do things. I think that's related to if your budget doesn't meet your commitments in future years, then you should stop doing TROs. Appendix E is the one that looks back, and that gives us some pointers of what to do if there's a deficit. And that says, and I paraphrase, really paraphrase this because it's much longer than I can say in a couple of paragraphs, but as soon as you know that there is a deficit, and that would be this meeting, because the year end wasn't known until about August, so this is the first meeting after the year end where that's been known. As soon as you know that, then each of the districts where there is a deficit should form a plan. And that plan should come to the next quarterly meeting of the Joint Committee. And then that plan has 12 months to take effect. And if that plan doesn't take effect, after that, the next Joint Committee, then the Treasurer, I think it was, of the lead authority will then send out the request to pay to each of the districts where there's been a deficit. So I think from December we have another 12 months to write the £160,000 2022-23 deficit, and any deficit that might occur in this year or surplus, it would be the best possible case would be to get back in surplus again, wouldn't it? None of this would be an issue. But yes, we have another 12 months then, and so on and so on. This is the way that I read what the appendix actually says. So I circulated that note in the week to the client officers. I'll wait a legal decision on what that actually means, but I think that's the next stage.
I'm sure there are some questions. I just want to make sure I get everyone the opportunity to have their say and have it answered by the relevant person, because we've got someone on Teams and etc. So I'll ask now if anyone's got any questions, please. Yes, Councillor Barry, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Richard, for the report. The first thing, you said that just in your closing remarks there that you mentioned the post of Treasurer, and we, I think, like everyone, have some significant concerns about the finances of the organisation, and we have been going through the agreement with fine tooth comb, accompanied by the 151 officer, and I don't think our interpretation quite rhymes with yours, but we can come on to that a bit later. So in the agreement, just can you clarify who the treasurer is of this organisation, please, and what is the process for that person, whoever it is, to sign off these accounts So if you could just answer that one first, I do have obviously some follow-up questions.
I'm guessing, and I'm guessing because I'm not that person, that it's our Section 151 officer.
You're guessing?
The treasurer is mentioned in the agreement, and the lead authority is the lead authority. So the only person it can possibly be is a Section 151 officer.
Sorry, can I? Yeah.
Chris, would you be able to?
Yeah, apologies. Sorry, can you hear me?
You're coming through loud and clear.
Right, okay. Sorry, I've got to explain the background. I'm the Deputy Section 151 officer at Epping Forest and Colchester, but I've just joined Colchester, so I'm completely new to the net, but I will take that one away for extra clarification. But I think at this stage, I think it is a reasonable assumption that I would be the Deputy Treasurer in this particular circumstance, but I'm happy to take that away for additional clarification. I do apologise, that's something I've inherited. With regard to the process to sign off the accounts, again, it's something that I'll have to take away. As I say, I'm completely new to the net, and I think it's an entirely fair question, and I will feed back on that.
Right, thank you, Chris. Yes, please make a note of these points. We will definitely be requesting your input for some answers. Councillor Barry, did you want to carry on?
Yeah, I mean, I am quite staggered by that response, that we are in the middle of what, an as yet undefined financial deficit position. And despite our best efforts since the last meeting, which has included a detailed set of questions from our 151 officer to the Colchester 151 officer, we've not had a response to those questions. So as a member of the tendering council and the representative on this board, if I'm asked what our potential financial responsibility to this body is, I'm not in a position to give that information at this point in time. Therefore, we can't budget for next year. And I think at this point, if I could refer to our 151 officer, just to give some more detail on that, because I'm not totally familiar with the actual mechanics of it, but I think the actual principle of where we are is really in a really difficult and unsustainable position.
Yeah, thank you for that. I suppose it's around assurance, isn't it? It's always about the figures that are in front of us and how do we make informed decisions back at the ranch. So it's a difficult. I'm just looking at the figures today as well, and they've changed again. I mean, they seem to change every 2 or 3 weeks. So forgive me, because I mean that's the nature of the beast, isn't it, to some extent? But you can imagine a level of confidence in the figures is quite low, and I think we just want to build that up from our perspective. And I think the questions of the Section 141 at Colchester was around that. It was around the agreement as well, because I think there's a lot of things I think we need to revisit the agreement as well to say how were we discharging this function as well, because there is, as you said, Richard, that clarification around the interpretation of those. I think some of us are new to it. Some of us have been, looking at it for ages. I think it's just that clarity around what does that actually mean, because I think in Appendix C it does talk about forecast as well. Where does it sit in Appendix F? So there's clarity around that. But I think, as you said, Councillor Barry, it's around confidence. At the end of the day, we've got a position where we need to set aside, we need to take a decision internally about what do we do at TDC in terms of funding the 3-4 position, and also looking forward to inform our budget setting. At the moment, it's very, very difficult to do that, and the number could be rather large. So I think there's that is that pure confidence assurance around it, which we're looking for.
Thank you, Richard. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with that, and I wasn't aware. I'd like to have been made aware if you were waiting for answers for a specific email. So just bear that in mind, because I will do everything in my power to ensure that those answers are sought in a timely fashion. Any further questions, please? Councillor Hargreaves.
Thank you. So looking at the figures in front of us, we've got a deficit on the reserve of £160,000. I'm assuming that is, if we look at Colchester's books, that will be an amount due from NEP to Colchester as the sort of funding authority for this at the moment. We're then looking at a prediction for the year of a 159,000 surplus. So those two will balance each other out. So if this is all comes to fruition exactly as written, we end at the end of the year with £400,000 still responsibility of participants. Put that cash back in, it'll be £7,000 each if it was cut seven ways. Now we are being asked here on the TROs to sanction further spending. If you're spending within agreed budgets and reserves, that's fine, you're not taking a financial decision. Actually, it's quite clear in the officer report here, we're being asked to spend outside of the contract. The contract says we should have stopped. We're being asked to spend beyond the contract. So we're being asked to take a financial decision. We might end up with no impact. We don't know that, but we're asked to take a decision. Because I don't think, and I'm the cabinet member for finance, but I've got no right to spend the council's money on my own, fortunately. So we've been asked to take that decision. So I think not a large amount of money we've been asked on the TROs, 42,000, something like that. What I would like to see, please, is a letter to go from NEP, from Section 1.1 officer, the Treasurer for NEP, to all our Section 1.1 officers saying we're working outside of the contract, outside of the reserves, and there may be a reserve that our participants will have to make, we will have to make at the end of the year, and a forecast of that may be £57,000 or whatever it is, so that we have an official sort of Section 1.1 officer side to this, as well as members just putting hands up saying, yes, we'd like some TROs, and us actually making a spending decision. I'm not entirely clear we have the authority to do. That will be a way of at least bringing this into a proper, more sort of regulatory procedure, rather than us just carrying on and our Section 1.5 officers just getting a nod from us. Oh, well, there may be a bit of a deficit at the end of the year. I don't know what it is. I've just heard it in the meeting. I think we need that in writing, please, as to what the position is, what the risks are, so it then becomes official. But when it comes to looking at the budget's outcome, a few months' time, I don't want somebody putting their hand up and saying, what's this NEP thing we're paying? Who agreed that? I'd like to have it something in writing for so a letter, please, from one Section 1.1 officer to 7 151 officers.
Thinking a roundabout way, I understand what you said. Richard, that's not a problem, is it?
The
letter? We can.
No, that's not a problem.
No, we'll do that then.
Yes, Chairman. Forgive me as a newcomer.
Sorry, Councillor, microphone.
Sorry, did go on. Okay. We're all as local authorities suffering from external audit delays. What is the position with the accounts of NEP? When were they last externally audited? And I read the annual reports, and I see there's a statement there, but there is no audit statement to accompany those accounts. And just for my education, if no one else's, could you put me in the position, please, as to what the situation is?
Hayley? Right, Chris, please.
Sorry. Sorry, can you hear me? Yes. Sorry, I was going to suggest, if I may, through you, Chairman, that we actually, I would actually broker a meeting with the Section 151 officers to develop a detailed response suggested along the lines of Councillor Hargreaves, which will sweep up all of that and bring back a report, an agreed report amongst Section 151 officers to the next meeting of this forum. If that's okay, we can sweep up a number of these issues and uncertainties. And I do agree that there is some potential debate around the agreement and how any deficits are shared or any liabilities accrued. And I think it would help. It would hopefully clear it up for most members of the committee, if that's okay.
Thank you for your input, Chris. I think you'll probably have.
That wasn't actually answering the question. The question was about the external auditing, and the answer is my council's got about 3 years of backlog. I reckon everyone's got backlogs. There's nothing we can do about it. So we've got to carry on with.
Yeah. So sorry, Colchester's in the same position. Sorry on that point. Yeah.
So we're all in that position, and yes, it's not good. We have to carry on as we are. My understanding is the government are now looking at ways of just saying we can have a light version of an audit. Personally, I think our full accounts are excruciating things of no great use. I stopped looking at them some time ago, but the audit itself is of use because, of course, it's an external verification that you said you've got £1 million in the bank. You have got £1 million in the bank, and it's not wrong. So it has a function. But we're just forced to carry on, assuming that it is correct and that we don't suddenly find we've got adjustments in the future. So it's not good, but I'm afraid NEP's not going to solve that one, and neither are the hard press section 1.1. Right. So I'm sorry to answer the question for somebody else. But
Thank you, Chris. You will, even though new to this role, you will sense the urgency and the concern that is within the room, and this is not the first meeting where this has been similar. So I will definitely be asking to move something forward relatively quickly in relation to these requests that have so far come through on the questions, and to get something out to the 151 officers to all the districts. So like Councillor Barrett, I just upgraded you then. Like Richard Barrett said, just to get some clarity and some certainty amongst ourselves, so we can come here with a bit more understanding and confidence. So I will definitely be in touch with yourself and the 151 officer to move something forward quickly. But thank you for your answer. Is there any more questions, please?
Yeah, thank you for that response. There's a level of reassurance there that I'm presuming by the next meeting in December that they would have convened the 151 meeting and clarified the points that are still outstanding. I know we have been asking these questions since the last meeting in June, and we've not had any answers to those. So let's hope the 151 officers can put their heads together and come up with some answers. And just say, does that mean now then that the issue raised by Councillor Hargreaves about us operating financially outside the agreement, if we approve these TROs, can I have some ruling on that, or is that something that we can do? Because I'm in a mind where I actually don't know, and I would be thinking of abstaining on this rather than committing to a further spend on a deficit that we have no control over at the present time.
sorry everybody, what we're talking about here is the cessation of TROs is given in Appendix F, which an Appendix F appears to be looking forward at the annual business plan for future years. So you're talking about approving TROs now, which will go into scheme design, and the spend for those TROs will be in a future financial year. At any one time, we're dealing with about 3 financial years worth of TROs. So we're just concluding the ones that were approved 3 years ago. We're working on the ones that were approved last year, and the ones you approved today will be started in the next financial year. So we're looking ahead to next year's business plan in this, aren't we, as the approval of these. So we're committing expenditure from a future year here. So Appendix F, talking about the future, says in the unlikely event that an operational deficit occurs. Now, it doesn't state what that means. In which year does it mean that? Does it mean that generally, or does that mean specifically in the annual business plan of the coming year? It's not clear. Which is not able to be contained within the annual business plan. You see where I'm coming from now with the annual business plan. Then you'll start to reduce items in Part 3, which is the money that would be given to Essex if there'd been a surplus, or items in Part 2, which are the TROs and any other innovation. So we're talking TROs here, but Appendix F talks about the future business plans, and you're committing in today's decision about future business. So I suppose the risk and the balance here is whether you think things are going to get better and they can be contained to such a point that your New Year's budget will stand the expenditure that you would approve or not with these TROs, or not. And as we sit here at the moment, we don't know the salary decision yet. So there are some unknowns that could be negotiated. We don't know, do we? So the answer is yes, it could be prudent to not do these. If you were to include them, then there will be costs that are in the next year's annual business plan, not the current year, and not the year where the deficit occurred. If we stop, then we stop. Those things that are on here just won't get done for the time being.
Can I suggest that we need both things? We need to know what the year-end forecast is for our accounts for this year ending in March. And because we're budget setting at the moment, we need to also know about the position for the next year. So we need both of them. We're having the budget for the following year to top this up. That will presumably be the £57,000, or maybe that's be called this year. I don't know. That's where we need a letter that says when would you want £57,000 each, and what is the future going to be. So it's year-end position and future budget. Have it in writing, please, so we can understand it.
The value of the TROs that you're considering here, which doesn't include officer time, we've just checked, is about £42,000. In the grand plan of scheme of things, it's not actually that large, but it is a substantial amount of the deficit amount.
On the scale of council deficits, I do agree it's not that great. Yes, we still need to know.
Thank you. Again, I have to say that I don't share Mr. Walker's interpretation of the Appendix E and Appendix F of the agreement. I see it differently, and I suppose that's what we really need to clarify before making any further decisions. And whilst it's 40,000 or whatever, and as you say, in the scheme of things, it's not a huge amount of money in terms of this partnership. It is about the principle of taking a decision based upon a lack of information and an aspiration, a hope. I mean, you said, well, we might be in a position to fund this. We might be in an even worse position in a year's time. Because, again, looking at the rescue plan, I have no confidence that that is going to deliver the surplus that's required to get the budget back on track. So we've got to find 400,000 for starters. And it says, again, interpret in the appendices, shall or must. It's, again, something that we've got to have clarification on. It does say must be maintained. So on top of this deficit, we've got 400,000 to find. So whilst I admit we could take, I would be suggesting that we possibly defer this decision until we sit again, and it's only, I think, a month's time or 6 weeks' time to the next meeting. Hopefully, between now and then, the 151 officers can come up with a clear and written endorsement of the position that we can then all take informed decisions on. Because at the moment, I'm just not clear, where we are, and I can't commit this on my authority to anything at the moment.
Reasonable suggestion there, Councillor Barry, and I wholeheartedly agree with you that this clarification, we're using that word a lot, and this piece of work for the 151 officers is absolutely imperative, as I said, and I will assure you all here today that that will be pushed forward as quickly as possible. So thank you. Any other questions, please? Yeah, Jason, please.
I think based on what's been said by members here, and obviously it'd be my report to present shortly anyway, if the decision is to proceed with it. But part of that report is to highlight the fact that Harlow schemes would be coming up for approval in December anyway. So I wonder if that report gets presented in its entirety in December, perhaps when there is some clarity around the finances, and then we can include the Harlow ones as part of that single report, as opposed to dealing with these ones today and then in a few weeks. So it's just a thought, perhaps, to consider.
Yep, no, I agree with what you're saying. That would make a lot of sense, because I had heard about the Harlow TROs when I spoke to Richard earlier on in the week. So yeah, that's fine. And I mean, we'll I don't know whether we need to take a vote on that, but we may well do. I think that's a sensible thing. Right. Any more questions, please? Right. Okay. I will just make note of the fact that unfortunately Jo Haynes was unable to attend today from Essex County Council. She was very poorly when I spoke to her on the phone this morning, and our business partner within Essex County Council and Jo and myself were due to have a conversation to cover some of the bits and pieces that have come up today, and unfortunately we weren't able to have that conversation. But it does somewhat concern me in terms of some of the non-understandings of the contract and what the meanings of the terms are, and I think that's really jumped out today quite drastically, and I really want to do all I can to ensure that we get a very clear understanding of what that contract exactly means. And at the end of the day, we all sign that contract as districts, so we are somewhat all in the boat together. So if there are no more questions on the finances. Okay, lovely. I've made a note of all of the things that have come out of that, as Owen has as well. So we will make sure that all of those things are put into practice. We move then on to I do. I think it's a good idea. We'll take a formal vote on setting up this 151 working party. I think that's a sensible thing to do. So I'd like someone to propose that, please. Councillor Barry? A seconder, please. Councillor Hargreaves. All those in favour, please. Yep. 5 in favour. Against? Abstentions? Councillor Goss, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. We then move on to item number 8. Which is the TROs. We've swapped them around. We do have a question from the public, which I would like to hear. So, Mr. Ireland, if you'd like to come forward. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ireland. Just do tell us who you are and where you come from, and then by all means tell us what you want to say. You just have to press the button that's got that voice with a couple of wireless signs coming out of its mouth.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the time to speak. I've come to speak on behalf of the community where I live, which is in the street Takeley. And we put forward a proposal for a parking permit zone. I'd like to explain why I think I do speak on behalf of the community, because I did a petition with my neighbours for the introduction of this parking scheme because of the problem that we have with fly parkers. I didn't just go round to the houses and just knock on the doors. I did actually take a petition round and took the time to read the entire petition to the people, and it was very informative because, not, I don't mean what I wrote, but the response, because where our houses are, on the north side, there are no parking spaces at all, and the houses were built 150 years ago. On the opposite side, the houses were built perhaps in the 1920s or something like that, and they have got some parking area. In the 1980s, early 1980s, parking bays were constructed on the opposite side, so on the south side, in order that the houses that had no parking on the north side, which is where we are, would have somewhere to park off the carriageway. Speaking to Sean Connor about how one goes about this process, he did explain that we had to get the approval of the local community, the total local community, not just those who would benefit from the parking. So I set about this, and it was quite surprising that even those who had the parking spaces were very supportive of putting in a parking control, and that's why it took quite a long time to go round, and I was very surprised. So. And it was very heartwarming. So on that part, we would just like to outline the fact that I've heard a lot about the money constraints, and we understand that the initial cost of the must be paid for out of the subscriptions, and so our immediate neighbours will undertake to guarantee any shortfall there might be in the initial sale of parking permits, so that we will undertake to pay whatever it takes to put in the posts and signage and what have you, which Sean has already given us an estimate of what that will be. So I'd like to take that away. I'm running out of time, so I think I'll stop at that point.
Thank you for informing us about that. So it's certainly something I get asked about quite a lot, permits, but it sounds like they've got the community on board there. So
we got 84%. I couldn't get to everybody because the weekend I did the survey, some people weren't in their houses, but sure, only one out of the entire community said they weren't supportive, and that was because they'd have to pay for a permit. Okay. And in fact, their house is outside the proposed area where the permit's going to be anyway. Well,
thank you for taking the time to visit us today in Clacton, and have a safe journey back.
Thank you.
Let's ask you a question. Obviously, I'm the councillor at Mucklesford, so I've had a look at this and had some say on this. Officer comment is they've been past quite a few times. It's never full. I don't drive past there very often. I've not seen it full. I'm now looking for it. I've been on satellites and Google Earth, so not. How often is that strip of 10 actually full up?
In the survey, we did for a period of a week in the summer, we did do a survey of every space was full. And that is typically what happens during the busy period, so it's summer, Christmas and holidays. And it's not just the fly parkers, it's people that come and park during the day and they go off, three arrive and they all go off in one car. So yes, there are parking spaces. So some of the time you can park, but generally speaking, there's about 6 cars parked on the pavement on the north side every day. Occasionally, if you can park, you park, but if you can't, you can't park.
Thank you for that clarification, Michael.
Right, thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
We have a written report as well, which Owen is going to read out. Thank you, Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a written statement provided by Mr. Jeff Smith, and it concerns TRO application T154999454 concerning the Summit Lawson. Statement starts. Following earlier correspondence on the parking problems within the Summit Lawton, we have now been advised that the following is the resolution recommended for approval at the NEP meeting on Thursday, 9th November. Open quotes. Junction red lines and waiting restrictions on the summit to prevent parking on both sides on narrow carriageway areas, end quote. This evening, there has been a further meeting of neighbours in the road to discuss the matter. We were already aware of the red line proposals from previous discussions, and we welcomed the specific inclusion of waiting restrictions in the above resolution. For clarity, we assume for this proposal to be effective that this combination of red lines and waiting restrictions will specifically apply to the main entrance to the summit from Baldwin's Hill up to the first houses that actually face onto the summit, and the narrower part of the road, which forms a spur to the right, which has 3 houses within it. This would then lead to parking being prohibited on one side of the road in these areas at any time and remove the real probability of future restrictions to the flow of traffic and possible serious consequences. We assume also that wider waiting restrictions on more general parking in the road will also apply on a Monday to Friday basis, with parking not allowed for a 2-hour period during each day. On the basis of these assumptions, we can see a scheme that is both workable and in keeping with other similar schemes in other roads already operating within the immediate area. We look forward to hearing further subsequent to Thursday's meeting. Statement ends.
Thank you, Owen, for that. I think being on this panel, you do learn how the traffic regulation orders come to pass, and it can be quite confusing as to the timescales and how it all pans out. But effectively, the client officers from the various districts put in their applications for TROs, and that generally happens by the end of July. And then we come to this meeting in October, and then we decide whether or not or which of those we're going to move forward for each of the districts. And effectively then that leads to implementation sort of in the spring. So there is that sort of time frame if anyone was wondering how these things come to pass. So I think that's quite an important thing to understand. Right, so in relation to the traffic regulations orders, Jason, did you want to just take us through anything or before we decided we defer this?
Thank you, Chair. I think given the size of the report and the number of schemes that are that require a decision, I think it's probably worthwhile going through them now, unless members would like us to do so. There is one point of clarification which can be corrected if we do present this report again, but it's in relation to the have you say item there. There is a slight error in the report in a sense for that particular scheme. So this is for the summit in Loughton. It doesn't include, or the proposal doesn't include waiting restrictions. So it's purely red lines. So that is something that we clarified to the person that has submitted the have you say item in relation to that. But I'll leave it up to members to decide if they would like me to present the report in its entirety or whether we wait until December. I'm quite happy to do it now, but I'd rather not have to do it all again in December.
Just a general feeling in the room. Do we want to hear the report now? I think if we're going to, we'll wait till. Yep. Oh, all right with that. Good. I'm going to move then that we defer this item to the next meeting. I think it's important we show support to the decision as a whole. So I'd like a seconder, please. Councillor Barry, all those in favour, please. Unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll look forward to your report in December, Jason, with a mince pie. We can afford them. Right, we then move on to item number 9, which is civil enforcement discretion in cancellation policy. Looks like you again, Jason.
It'll actually be my colleague Jake that will be presenting this report.
Sorry.
It's okay.
That's fine. So hopefully this one won't be too contentious. We're not anticipating it to be. So there's a couple of, let's go back a step. One of the recommendations from internal audit was to update policies. We've previously had TRO policy, also had cones policy. They've been signed or updated and signed off at committee. The two policies that we're now bringing to today, and actually in fact amalgamating into one policy, is the PCN cancellation policy and the enforcement and discretion policy. I'll give a pit stop tour of what this policy actually says, but essentially it gives some guidance on what would constitute a cancellation and what would constitute waiving the PCN. For our technical clarity, cancelling is anything that's within the regulations that say we must do something and we haven't done that thing. And then we've been quite explicit at trying to be a bit more transparent within this policy, and actually pointing out those bits of regulations that we have to comply with. And then we then also got what would constitute waiving a penalty charge notice. So that would ordinarily be a mitigating circumstance that would either align with the TROs that we've got, so the traffic regulation orders, or best practice introduced through appeals with the Traffic Penalty Tribunal, which is the independent adjudicators. So we've been a bit more clear on the differences between cancelling and waiving, as well as those references to the regulations where applicable. Where the mitigating circumstances are concerned, it's not a complete list. It's just what we find to be the most common reasons that people appeal PCNs, and just given some guidance on what evidence, if any, we would accept representation in those particular circumstances. So as a result of that, it not being an explicit list, we have removed some mitigating circumstances because we felt that they weren't used anymore at all, or they just weren't relevant. We have amended some to include the more digital transformations within our systems, digital permits, but also some changes post-pandemic in key workers, obviously being a key term that's now quite often used. Sort of naming those within some of those circumstances as well. But to point out the fact that most actually remain the same, they're not changed post-review. So that's what we're looking for approval, is to agree that new policy, agree amalgamating those two, and agree the changes that have been institutionalised part of that change. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. First reference for the next set of policies that come back to be amended. If you're making changes, it does need to be done in edit marking mode so we can see what's been changed. Here it's just a document. It's a very long document. Second point is amalgamating the two. There appears to be duplication now of numbers. So I've got two MCO5s. I'm guessing lots more duplications. Got page 40, page 53. The reason I picked on MCO5 is because it refers to feeding a meter. Now, those of us who are old enough can remember about 40 years ago feeding meters. But I don't think we have any meters that can now be fed, so that's an out-of-date phrase that I think probably needs to come out. It then refers to about adding extra tickets. However, it needs, I think, also to move to the 21st century on the phone apps. They're not mentioned at all in here. And I'm assuming phone app, it gives you a ping, you've got 15 minutes left, do you want to add more? If that phone app, and it's presumably our phone app, happens to be wrong, not been updated, and it says, yes, that's fine, you can add more, and the person's overstayed, and they then phone up and say, well, your phone app said it was fine, that I suggest needs to be a line in here, should the phone app actually be wrong, and it's our phone app, whether we accept that as a mitigation. I would say, well, yes, we do, because it's our phone app that's saying wrong, we should do so. Whereas written on here will be, nah, you need to have read the notice. Well, no one reads notices, do they? So that would be my suggestion for MCO5. And also page 38 refers to fax numbers. I think the NHS will ask people to use faxes. I've never used a fax now for about 50 years. I think to show we've updated this, maybe faxes should just be taken off. And maybe a generic line put in about any other suitable, decent method of communication that we all use. Something like that that covers that we'll use WhatsApp, anything else, stuff. It's not just emails. Yeah, I think fax is stuck out as a document a long time ago.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they cannot confess to have read the whole lot.
No, that's a very good point. We have quite a few policies and bandied with the idea at some point amalgamating them into one big one. But yeah, a very valid point. We'll make sure with any of the future updates, we'll highlight exactly what has changed to save reading time.
For the phone apps, I'm suggesting you do that now.
Yeah. So for the phone apps,
yeah,
we'll make sure that's added. I'll look at the MCO5 and just double check the numbers as well. And yeah, we'll make the amendment to the reference to the fax. Of course.
Subject to those changes, though, are we happy to approve this now? Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Goss, thank you very much. Seconder, please. Councillor Button, thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you. Neil, were you abstention or were you in favour? Sorry, I didn't. Did you vote? You're in favour. Okay, thank you. It's unanimous, I think. We move then on to item number 10, obstructive parking.
It's the item we've all been waiting for, and my report is, as normal, very short. There's been no progress on this. There's a plan for drivers proposed by government, but this didn't feature in it. The last I heard is the same as I mentioned at the last meeting, I think, where we'd been to the patrol parking awards meeting, and the Minister for Roads and Transport, Richard Holden MP, had said that the government would make a response to its consultation on this within the coming months. Some months have passed, but we haven't yet heard that. So that's it, Mr. Chairman. No further action.
Questions, please. Okay, we move then on to item number 11, which is the forward plan. Owen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Short one from me. I've got nothing to add to it except to acknowledge I will schedule in for the December meeting the TRO reports, which we had and have deferred from this meeting on the understanding that there will be an informal meeting of Section 151 officers in between. We'll schedule that TRO report to then come back to us in December, assuming that will happen. One thing I did want to raise, though, is that I believe our representative from Harlow wanted to raise an item, and as we don't have any other business section, I think it's probably the work programme item that that this will come under.
Right, thank you very much for that, Owen. I think we've come to the conclusion of the meeting. Sorry, I do apologise. Sorry, Nikki.
Under any other business, I just wanted some clarification and something to put forward to the committee is 19th of December 2022, traffic regulation order policy change regarding the schemes and how we score the schemes. Now, my understanding from my predecessor, this was not agreed at that meeting. Since then, we have gone and used that actual point scoring to actually validate the schemes going forward. Now, if we didn't agree it, how comes we are actually using it?
Jason, please.
Yeah, the scoring methodology came to the March Joint Committee meeting for further scrutiny and approval. So that's when that scoring methodology was finally approved by the committee.
Yeah, I just come back up. Obviously, speaking to the officer, that obviously our member didn't attend that actual meeting. So obviously, I've gone from the December meeting. Obviously, it would be something that we would like to ourselves review, if that would be possible, to have a joint officer and member meeting at some point to actually review the scoring.
I don't see that being a problem. I suppose what would be good is if there was some suggestions for what to change as part of the policy. Then I've got no issue with setting up a meeting to look to discuss that. That's fine.
Can we just make sure that's with all the members?
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Nikki. Right, that's the end. Oh, sorry, apologies. We need to approve that work programme. I'll propose that. Seconder, please. Councillor Goss, all in favour? Thank you. Councillor Hargreaves, did you want to come back in?
Another point, just for future meetings, if we're looking at contracts like the should and the must, another probably quite substantial thing is that we now realise Essex to retain the power to do TROs and to set up on-street parking charges if they wish. Which I didn't realise. I thought when you delegate powers, you delegate them in their entirety. You retain right of step in if it's not being done properly, but you don't retain the power to do it all yourself. It's not clear whether they would need to come through NEP if they want a scheme, or whether any income from on-street charges would come to NEP or go straight to Essex. Don't think that's a satisfactory thing in the contract. You either delegate it or you don't. I don't like the concept that Essex may do what they wish. We may or may not have any say, and it doesn't say in the contract. So I would suggest we need that looked at, and possibly something on the lines of, if Essex wish to do something, that's fine. They're a participant in this as well. They come to NEP, it goes to the NEP processes, and any incomes go to NEP, not to Essex. It's just something that's arisen. I didn't realise it was there. It's very odd to me that it should be in the contract. I think that needs to be dealt with as well as any other looks. So.
There are some instances where Essex needs to retain the right to make a parking TRO. One off the top of my head, I can think if they're moving a zebra crossing, that might impact on parking TRO, so they'd need to change that at the same time as they change the zebra crossing. Essex also have the safety, congestion and new development TROs works. So if they can claim, they have a policy for each of those, and they retain the right to make other TROs. That was the way it's always been with it. But we'll look into it because I think it's ambiguous as well. I agree.
Right, okay, thank you for that point, Councillor Hargreaves. I would just like to thank you all for coming and for the food that was supplied today by Tendring District Council. Chris, thank you for joining us in the background, as well as other officers and the members of the public that have attended today. Chris, if you're still on the call, just you will have sensed some of the frustrations that we are going through as a committee in relation to understanding some of these figures and facts and figures. So I urge you please to have a conversation with Andrew and pull together this piece of work involving all the 151 officers. And from what I heard within the room, I believe there's some unanswered questions that Tendring have emailed across. So if you could maybe just give Andrew a nudge on that, that would be wonderful. So thank you very much, everybody. And I wish you all a very safe journey home.